Welcome everybody, I'm Chris Wooley, the photo professor, and we're here for another episode of Office Hours. I appreciate you being here, joining us, talking everything photography, looking at how we can retouch images and just understand the science behind photography better too. We want to be making better decisions so we can end up with better photographs, and that's exactly what we're looking at today. So one of the fun things that we've been doing the last few episodes has been questions from you. So we're going to be answering some of those and having a nice discussion about them. So I'm excited about talking about those. Up first, I've got a question from Heidi, who wants to know, how do we balance the technical and things that hold attention, or the emotional aspect of things? And she's particularly looking at it through a commercial lens. Oh, Sarah can't hear. I am muted on this. Okay. I'm muted on the Zoom call.
Got
I was
your back.
Not muted live. Thank you guys for catching my attention on that one. So let's start over. Go back. Welcome to Office Hours. Yay. We're going to be jumping in with questions. This first question is from Heidi, wanting to know how we balance the technical and the emotional side of things. So she's looking at it through the commercial lens. How do you have something that's technically perfect, or maybe represents a brand and how they like to project their stuff, versus things that actually grab attention or helps people feel something? Like, that's our big one that we want to look at, is like, how do we actually make that happen? And that's something that I struggle with personally, and I know a lot of other photographers do too. We have essentially kind of two brains that are working with us. On one side, we've got our very technical focused things. How do we get the proper exposure, the good composition, maybe leading lines that are coming into it, color harmony, tonal harmony, all that fun stuff. How do we make all the technical things work and make it so that somebody actually wants to look at the image? So it's not just technically perfect, not a textbook example, but something that can actually go out in the real world. And that's something that each of us as artists have to kind of figure out how we balance those things. So I personally love to lean into the technical side of things and say, all right, I know what I want to accomplish. I have my overall master goal. This needs to sell something. This needs to promote somebody, give good, warm, fuzzy feelings on it, remind me of my family, whatever the case is. We've got a goal that's coming forward with our images. And so we have to have the technical that's going to support that goal. So the decisions that we make with it need to affect or kind of help us end up with that final resolve, what we want in the image. So that means if I want something that has maybe a softer, more organic feel, I don't want to have very stylized studio lighting. I don't want colorful gels coming through. I want maybe soft, sweeping light that goes across the set, producing some natural shadows. So if one's more technically correct than the other one, it's more about photographer's choice. What's going to be creating that feeling or that emotion that we want with it? So you make the technical choices that reaffirm what our emotional impact needs to be. And this is something that takes a lot of time and practice, and then our own personal biases are going to be in there too. So you might particularly hate hard lighting. I love it, so I tend to throw in hard lighting, even if it might not necessarily be the best option if we're just looking at it, but it's something that makes me happy, and so I tend to throw those in there. Just like I tend to use a lot of lights because I love it. I love adding in those little pops and accents and things. It just makes me happy, so I let that influence my decisions with it. And so as we're trying to come up with that emotion, it's important that we don't just get caught up in that technical, that perfection. I don't remember who said the quote, but we say that perfection is the enemy of coming across or getting that good, that done that's coming up there. If we can get something that accomplishes our goal, it doesn't have to be perfect. We just need to get it out there, get that emotion, get that conversation that's coming on. I butchered the quote on that one, but we'll have to look it up for next time. But as we're going through it, we just want to make sure that we're getting that right emotion that's coming through, and that we figure out how we can connect with the audience while accomplishing our goals. And if we can find that crossroads between accomplishing our goals and making those technical choices that helps us get us there, and the emotional side that accomplishes our goals, where those two elements intersect, that's where we're going to end up with impactful images that have the technical side, but it's not entirely dictated by it. If we spend all of our time obsessing over every technical detail, we're going to miss out on the moments. And that's part of the romance of photography, is that we do get to see those fun moments, those candid elements, those happy accidents that just says, you know what, this is real. This isn't something that's AI generated. It's not coming out of a computer program. It's something that a real artist made, observed, and decided to present forward to us. So it's something we definitely want to practice with. Understanding the technical and knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it's really important. And if we've got that, then we can make those informed decisions and start adventuring into that world of emotion. All right, next question. We've only got 2 more going on here before we start looking at images. This one's from Sarah, and she wanted to know about storing images and how we back them up, how we organize them. So this one is going to vary wildly depending on what your workflow is. For instance, a fine art landscape photographer might have a different backup system than somebody that's doing volume school portraits. They've got different needs, different processing techniques, but some of the core strategies or saving files or how we actually get them saved and archived can be the same. So I'll share what I do, and then we can look at some of the other options as well. So for me, I use what's known as a network attached storage, or a NAS. And essentially, this is just a whole bunch of hard drives that's in a mini computer by itself. This serves as a server. So that's where all the files, one central location, can be saved at. And what's kind of cool about a NAS versus like an external hard drive or just saving them on like your C drive on your computer is that with a NAS, we're able to use what's known as a RAID system, which means that we are backing up files. So instead of just having that one file saved in one location, in a RAID setup, we have that one file that's saved and it's duplicated and mirrored. And there's a whole bunch of different technical details in terms of different RAID configurations, like how many times do you want to have that data backed up. I personally find just having one backed up copy of it meets my needs for most cases, and that's all saved on that NAS. So that if I ever have a drive go bad, and I've got like 6 drives in my NAS, each one of them's I think about 12 terabytes, so it's quite a bit of storage that's there. But if I were to have any one of those drives go bad, I still have all the rest of my files saved up. So that's really nice for some redundancy, having some extra backup protection. Now, when I have finished artwork, so stuff that's going to go out to the clients, I also save that in a cloud drive. So I use Google Drive. I've got a large subscription to it, so I can have terabytes of storage on there, so I'm not shy on that by any means. You could use Dropbox, you could use another online backup system, but I like to save a copy of it, a final or finished copy, in the cloud. And I do this for a couple of reasons. One, I want to make sure that I've got those final finished photographs that are someplace separate from what my NAS is. Just in case something happens, maybe my studio burns down, maybe there's a large lightning storm and it comes and it fries all the electronics in my studio, and now I have no access to any of my computers. I want it someplace off-site and in the cloud. That works really, really well for it. So for me, I've got it on the NAS, and it's got the redundancy there, that RAID setup, and I've got a cloud for the final images. And so if I were to lose everything that's coming through and I just have the cloud ones, I at least have the final finished client artwork. So if somebody's missing something, I can still retrieve it. I can send it to them easily. If we have something I need to find down the road, I've got those finished pieces. Now, I don't have the working files. I don't have the raw files or anything like that because those are all saved on my NAS, the network attached storage. So this is a good compromise for me between having so much redundancy, files that I'm never going to look at. I probably don't need to have the outtakes from a headshot session that was 10 years ago. I'm very unlikely to go back and need those. Occasionally I do, like if somebody passes away, I might want to go through and see if I have something that's less happy smiley for a memorial portrait or something, but it's pretty rare that I need to go back and actually retrieve those. But I do frequently need to go back and be able to find images maybe for competition. Those are going to be on my cloud storage. If I have something that was delivered to a client and I want to make sure that I can get a reprint or send it to them if I need to, that's all going to be on that cloud storage. So that's the setup that I use for it. It's just making sure that I've got redundancy between them, and I don't delete or format my memory cards, or if I'm shooting tethered, I'm not deleting them off that computer until I've already gone through the full retouching process on them and I'm ready for client delivery. So I just have a stack of old cards that I'm using, or my hard drive fills up if I'm tethered shooting, and that just stays there as a backup copy until my files are uploaded to the cloud and they're delivered to my clients, or physical prints are going there and my archive is just staying on that cloud storage. So that's the process that I use. I've experimented a whole bunch over the years, and that's a system that is something that is repeatable, something I can work on every time, and works for what my setup is. So for me, that's accomplishing my goals. Now, if you aren't ready for like a NAS, it's about $1,000 or so to get the NAS plus all the drives that are on there. So if you're heavy into photographing, it's way worth it. It's one of the best systems and setups that are there, but you can start smaller. If you don't necessarily need to have that RAID setup, meaning that you have the duplicate that's on there, we can work with smaller external drives. Those are a really, really nice stopgap just for having it backed up in another location. A good strategy might be to store a backup copy of those drives and keep it at a friend's house or a relative's house, just so it's off-site, just in case your studio burns down or your home studio burns down. Somebody comes in and steals everything, you've got an off-site or an off-location one. Those drives are a little bit spendy right now. All hard drives are, due to the drive shortage that's out there. So I like to be a little bit more cautious about how much information I'm storing. And so I've gotten a lot better over the years of not photographing as much. And if I do photograph, I'm not saving every single raw file. I'm only saving the files that I actually need, so that I'm not inflating those drives. I'm just being a little bit more cautious with my space so it doesn't fill up as quickly. In terms of like file naming and storage, this one's entirely going to be dependent on the type of photography that you do. For me, I like to separate my sessions based on what I'm actually photographing. So this could be something that's going to be like, here's individual portraits or headshots. I photograph a lot of those. If I'm doing vintage portraits, I've got that in a separate folder system. If I'm doing a commercial job, I'm putting that in a separate folder system. If I'm doing corporate work, I'm putting that in a separate file system. And so I've got different folders based on the job type, and that helps me find individual jobs that I need the images from. Now, if you aren't working with clients like I do, and maybe you're doing like fine art, or you're documenting rodeos, or you're doing more personal type stuff, it might make more sense to have it organized in like a Lightroom catalog. So you can have your sessions broken down by the date that you actually photograph them, and then we can use something like Adobe Bridge or Adobe Lightroom to go through, organize our files, and use that as our main viewing system. That works really well if you have, say, multiple versions of a file that you're working on. You can create virtual copies, you can link to them, you can work on them a whole bunch of different ways. So it's a really cool system if you're using it more for personal work. But I find if I'm doing client work, I like to have everything completely segregated. If I'm working on one client, I don't want to have other clients' images in that folder. It just slows stuff down, and that's an unnecessary step. I like that segregation that's on there. So what systems are you guys using for backups? Any comments on there? Is anybody here using a NAS?
Well, since it was my question, it was a rhetorical one for a reason I'll tell you. I do run a NAS, 16 terabytes and 5 SSDs of 4 terabyte each for immediate separating, just like you spoke of, Chris, that I put one kind of job or images on each one of those, and then they go to the NAS later on. The reason I'm asking is that my nephew happens to be in digital storage, and he is inventing a new way for creatives very inexpensively to be a one-shop ease of storing everything, like being on the crowd, but for the small creative person, not being in the regular or cloud. And I want to know what other people are doing, because you got to know your customer. So I'd love to hear what other people are doing.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious, and maybe I'll talk your ear off when we have a little bit more time.
Another time.
On here for the one caution that I would have about like an all-in-one system is that we want to make sure we've got redundancy, that it's not all saved in one spot. For instance, having 2 copies of the same file on your C drive, I'm just simplifying this, but on your C drive it's fine if one of those files goes corrupt, but if your entire drive goes bad, or like an entire cloud system goes down, you've lost everything. And so having it on multiple mediums is really, really nice. So I'm kind of curious on what he's coming up with to see how that might be able to work with this system. Something else that you might want to be aware of is there are online backup systems, such as like Backblaze, that allows you to upload your entire catalog, terabytes of information, into online storage. It's a lot slower and a lot cheaper than putting it on, say, Dropbox or Google Drive. you just don't necessarily have instant access to it. So it's kind of like that, oh no, what if, that lockbox that's at that bank where we can upload these files and they're saved securely. But if you ever need to access them, it's really slow to download them or maybe even physically getting it mailed back to you. So it's more of an insurance policy versus a quick reference if a client needs a file quickly, not the solution for it. Let's see, coming up here, JR saying Lightroom catalog on one external, raw backup on an external before I reformat the card. Really, really safe process to do that. I love that redundancy and just having that extra step. I can always go back to the original files. All right, let's move on to our last question that we've got today before we start looking at some of the images. And this one's from Heidi about photographing glass and liquids. Specifically, she wants to know what the first lighting decision is going to be. If you have something that's going to be difficult to photograph, like glass and liquids, what lighting decisions do we do when we're looking at it? What's the very first thing that you do, and how do you know if that's the correct decision? And lighting glass and liquids is hard. If you've ever tried photographing anything that's a reflective surface, you have to incorporate it. It requires a lot of advanced thinking and planning in order to make it look right. It's really easy to get small specular highlights that are coming across an image, or we have weird refraction patterns that are happening, and so we need to make sure that we're accounting for them. And so the very first thing that I want to do is figure out, how am I going to separate my subject from the background? And that is going to be my primary dictating thing that I'm looking at, is how am I going to make sure that my subject pops out? And so when I'm setting up that lighting, that's the very first thing I'm doing, is making sure I've got that good isolation. And then I can start adding in smaller details and accents that tell my story. So if we go back to that first question, balancing the technical with the artistic, that technical side, I know my subject needs to pop against that background, whether it's going to be in a magazine or an online advertisement or just portfolio work. I don't want it blending into the background, so I need to make sure that I've got that really nice, maybe it's a rim light, maybe I'm lighting the background to provide separation, but I've got that nice separation that's happening, so my subject does not blend into that background. Very first thing that I'm doing, and then I can start building the rest of the set around it. How do I know that that's the right decision? It's not necessarily. That's just my personal preference. If you have a different goal or intention with lighting your glass or your liquids, then you're going to play into what that effect is. For instance, if you really want to do it more of a study on how light interacts with some of these things, maybe you've got some cool ice cubes or light that's coming through a glass and it's producing really cool patterns, maybe that's your focus, and it's not on selling the item as a product. You're not selling the glassware, you're not selling the liquid that's inside, but instead you're just selling the art piece that's there playing with that look at light. The separation in that point isn't the biggest priority then. And so this is going to kind of vary depending on what your actual goal with it is. Are you going with something that's going to be artsy? Are you going with something that's selling a product? What are you trying to accomplish there? Most of the time that I'm doing something like that, though, I want that separation. So that's my starting point. And I've got an image here, so we're going to take a peek at it. And this is glassware with liquid. So perfect segue for this. Thank you, Heidi. And this is actually Heidi's image that she's letting us use so we can look at some of this stuff. And I'm just going to come up here and let's get a nice green so we can see where stuff is going. And I'm going to get my brush coming up here. And let's look at a couple of things that are going on with it. So with this one, notice that our subject does stand out from the background. We've got these beautiful golden tones that are coming through, these nice ambers and oranges, but we do start to lose a little bit of area, like right here. We can't quite tell where that definition is, that ending area. They start to kind of blend in. And so what I'm looking for is separation. I want to be able to see those points so that they pop out, so that we aren't getting caught up in it and missing a little bit of that detail. So that slight rim or separation would work great, or throwing a light on the background might be a really nice choice for popping that out. Next thing that I want to look at, and this is the big challenge anytime we're photographing glass, anything that's got that translucence to it, is we're going to be looking at what our highlights are and where they're at. And I'm going to kind of pull up right here in this one particular area just so that we can see. And notice that we see this reflection of our light source coming back from the glass. And it's not like it's a mirror or a flat plane where we can just turn it and get rid of it, or a polarizer that we could throw on. We're still going to see some of the reflections. And we see a secondary reflection over here. This is something that we're always going to be battling when it comes to product photography, particularly with glassware. So having something with a really large light source that's soft and diffuse can help give us that shape that fills up this entire thing. So with this one, we can tell we are using a pretty small light source, and it's stopping. Look at that hard line that's coming here, hard line that's coming here. So that one is not extending this full length of what's come up here. I'd love it if we had that nice soft light that came up here. It would just feel elegant and very polished. Similarly, if we look on the bottle, we can see that we've got maybe a round light source. That could be an octabox, or that could be a reflector, maybe a round reflector with a light source that's coming behind it. So if we've got that, this doesn't produce as polished of a look, having all these circular things. And so we've got a lot of random lights that are just distracting. They add in secondary elements that takes us away from our primary focus of this beautiful bottle that we have here. So a really, really common thing that we can do is just use a sheet of translucent paper. Kind of think of it like a soft diffusion, like if you had the fabric, the diffusion fabric that goes in front of a softbox. Same type of thing. They do sell it on rolls if you do commercial photography, which is really nice because you can get really big light sources now that are going to go, and we're, instead of having this one circular one, we can have one that covers this entire spot of the bottle coming down, and it's just a soft taper that comes through. It give us that beautiful catch light everywhere on our image. Super, super nice looking. So if we use that large soft light source that we can help add some direction, and we marry that with that nice popping or that rim light or separation there, we've got something that's absolutely beautiful coming through. Other thing I want to be aware of is reflections. If I see right here, it looks like we've got maybe a light stand or something that was photographed, and we see just that hint of reflection coming through. So the more that we can polish it, black out, maybe holding up black foam core or a black background in front of our camera or in front of our light stands, just helps control what those reflected elements are. That way, our entire focus goes onto our subject and we aren't brought out with it. I'm seeing that we've got lots of chats coming on here. For a budget-friendly thing, I heard use shower curtains. So a shower curtain, yeah, that can totally work. So that's going to be a very large source. So the thing about shower curtains, though, is that they are going to be semi-reflective, so they're less matte feeling, and we're going to end up with a little bit more hot spots. So we could use a shower curtain. If you could put a secondary, something like maybe a pillowcase or 2 shower curtains in a row, the first one would help diffuse that light, spread it out, and then when that light hits the second shower curtain, it spreads out even more and we get that softness. Just making sure we've got some gaps in between so that light's allowed to expand and fill up the space more. So yeah, it doesn't matter what the material is that we're using as long as it's accomplishing our goal. And if we have something that's large and semi-translucent, that's perfect. A white linen sheet could work too. You just have to turn up your brightness of your, or the intensity brightness of your light a little bit more to get through there. So let's move on and let's look at some more images. I'm excited about it. Let's see. We've got from Cheryl, our cowboy here. I'll be your huckleberry. So really, really neat image of our cowboy that's on here. I appreciate the really strong contrast that we have. The light to dark, those deep blacks coming through just pull us right into the subject. So we know exactly where we want to be looking at with this image, which I think is pretty nice. Our subject is very, very high contrast in this scene, and the details in the glasses make you want to get kind of lost in his expression. What's going on here? One of the major things that's going to hold this image back is our image quality. This looks like it's been cropped down quite dramatically from a larger image, and so we're starting to get some pixelization. We're losing some of those details, some of that contrast. It's just been worked a little bit too much or cropped in too much for us to have the impact. And that maybe was shot with a smaller camera, or maybe it was a larger scene and this was the dramatic moment that we wanted to focus on. So I do appreciate the crop that is here in terms of having our subject off-centered, but we are getting a little bit low on that image quality. So the really grainy vignette that we have here kind of pulls attention away. We get some micro contrast that's up here with a really, really defined rim of the hat, and start losing some of those details. These are things that if we were, say, up closer photographing it, or we had a little bit more megapixels in this image, we'd be able to pull off. So if we're looking for something like web type use, not a big deal. If you're going to be making a large print of this and putting this in a gallery, that is a big thing. So that's something that we can't necessarily affect, that image quality, but we can look at some of the other things that are going on with it. Distracting element is going to be this vignette, and that's kind of this darkening edges. So the vignettes can be nice for pulling attention into our primary subject, so that we're brought into this area and not exiting the frame. That's why it's nice to have vignettes sometimes, and I like to use them. I'm definitely a vignette user on it, but we have to make sure that we aren't going too heavy. Right now it's a pronounced vignette, which means we get really dark in these corners. And so that can be from inexpensive lenses. That can be from something like a lens shade that's causing it. I have a feeling with how symmetrical and the image quality that we have on this, that this was probably added in post. And for me, it's just a little bit too heavy. It adds some defining elements that actually pull us up into these corners versus letting us stay focused on our primary subject. So if we could lighten up that vignetting, that would be amazing. Other thing that I would love to see on this, and this could either be taking this into like an artist type composite for competition or something to consider for next time when photographing it, is adding in a little bit of a secondary story. So our primary subject looking pretty cool. We've got that story of what's going on in the glasses. The resolution's not quite there that we can tell exactly what's happening. So if we had a more defined moment in the reflection on the glasses, like maybe we see somebody that he's talking to, maybe we see a horse that's there, I don't know. We could be seeing something kind of cool there. Maybe we have a secondary element that's back here that helps tell part of that story too. I don't know what that is, but maybe it helps tell that story just a little bit more and add some additional context. And so essentially that would come down to extracting our subject and replacing the background with something that's adding into our story. So different ways that we can look on it, but I think the key moment, finding a unique guy and making sure that we've got something that draws us in and pulls us in with those glasses, definitely strong moves. Would love to see a little bit of improvement in the image quality, whether it's reworking the original files or something to consider for next time, and then definitely keeping that storytelling element going strong with it. Let's see, got coming back here, and we shot on R6 with an 80-200 at f1.2. Dang, a 1.2 80-200. That's got to be a heavy lens. So we had some nice compression that was on there. So it sounds like she was getting in pretty close with it. It's one of the joys of having the maker on the call with us, right? But if we could add in that little bit of a background element, maybe just seeing like a fence or a little bit of dirt or something could be kind of cool. Water tower in the background, anything could add to it. But thank you for sharing, Cheryl, with our image. Let's go on.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback. Like this is a first ever for me. So, and he was on a horse.
Just to make it challenging, right?
Yeah, and that is one of the challenges as a rodeo photographer, that what I get is what I get. I don't often have time to say, oh, time out, stop. Let me get this for you. So I greatly appreciate the feedback, because this was done in post.
So something that you might consider if you are going out here, photograph in two different ways. So photograph that tells the story of the rodeo, of the events and the action that's happening there, getting those cool moments and focusing on the tight emotion that's there. And then a second one, maybe shoot a little bit wider and just get stock stuff for you. Saying, you know what, I might play with this later. I could combine this image with a neat landscape and it'd have a whole bunch more impact, more storytelling to it. Is it accurate to what happened the day up? Absolutely not. But does it look really cool and maybe wants to be up on somebody's wall? So we've got some kind of fun things that we can do there. If you're going to be entering competition, rodeos are really, really nice for the reportage category. There's just so much action and there's just so much romance with the dust, the action, the movement, the hats, the sweat, the emotion, that they're just primed for that reportage category. So you can't do a lot of this manipulation stuff in it, but you can tell the story. And if you focus on their good composition that you've got here and that storytelling element, you'll do well in competition with it. So
Okay,
keep those two
thank
lenses
you.
in mind as we're going through stuff. All right, we're looking up more. And we've got an image from Liz here, where steel meets wind. So I really appreciate the storytelling that's happening on it. We have our train producing all this nice pollution that's coming up here, that steam engine going through. It's dark, it's gritty, it's awesome. And what do we have in the background? Green energy. We've got all those windmills coming on. That is just like the perfect juxtaposition or for social commentary here, right? So we've got our green world and we've got our industrial machines, the past, the present, the future. There's some nice commentary. I don't know exactly what the message is, but I like it. It makes you think. It's got something going on. So I definitely appreciate that. So let's look at some of the things that are working with it. The nice storytelling, I'm just totally in love with this image, and I think that's its biggest strength is this juxtaposition between the background and the foreground. We also have some nice visual interest, some cool lines coming through that leads us into our subject, lines pointing everywhere. We've got cool stuff that's coming up, all pointing in. All of that's just leading us right into our subject. So really nice job on the compositional elements of this. So what can we improve on then? It gets really dark and blocky up here. Really dark. We start to lose some of that kind of moment, that decisive moment that's coming through. Also have a really bright area right here. So those are the two things that we're going to want to adjust. And let me show you a cool way to do that. I'm going to duplicate this layer with Control or Command J and open up in Camera Raw Filter. One of my favorite filters. We can do everything in it. So we're just going to do that so we can look at stuff all together. And I want to be focusing on this train, lifting some of these details here. So I'm going to come up here to our quick masks mode. And that one's going to allow me to go through and say, you know what, let's select an object. I'm just going to kind of select the black part of this train. Get that all painted in right there. We don't have to be perfect with these. We just got to be close so they can actually find it. It found it pretty well. That's selected. So now we can start playing with some of those details. And first thing I want to do is bring up the highlights. Now I might be wondering, why would you do the highlights first instead of lifting up those shadows? And it's because I want those specularities, those bright white areas. I'm going to just crank this up just so we can see. It's already popping and having a lot more depth that's coming through. So now that I've got my light point set up, we can start playing with some of the others. I'm going to bring up that highlights too, just so that we get those nice tones coming through. And now it's just this deep dark area we got to focus on or work. So I can start taking those shadows and lifting them up just a little bit. There we go, just like that. And maybe the blacks just a hair. And let's lower the contrast just a teeny tiny bit. So now this feels like it belongs a little bit more in with it. I can take that down. Here's where it was before. And here it is with the changes that we made. A little bit heavy-handed, so I'm gonna pull that back just a little bit so it doesn't need to be quite as strong with it. So now we've got some detail and definition. It's not a black, deep, dark pit that's coming up here. We've got some texture and detail. We're allowed to explore it. That's working for it. I'm happy with what's going on there. Next thing I want to do is kind of work this area over here. And I can do that with another quick mask. And I'm just going to use the brush in this case and just say, you know what, let's kind of paint this area. Not being too precise, just getting it that light area. And let's take down some of those whites. I want this to be lower contrast. And I'm just kind of playing around here saying, you know what, I don't want to have as much stuff that's there. I just don't want it to pull in attention. There we go. Just brought it down. It kind of blends in a little bit more, kind of a before and after. We can see that we lose some of the color, some of the contrast. It feels like it's there, but it doesn't feel like it's been worked. And that's the important thing. We don't want it to have too much grit. We want it to feel pretty natural. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK on this. And we've got our train that's lightened. Here's kind of before and after. Before and after, definitely popping, and we've got more focus that's on it. Now, we could take this even more extreme if we wanted to maybe play with the drama that's there. I kind of like what's being presented here with a nice natural look, but I want to show you because it's kind of fun. I'm going to pop up a new filter, and we're going to come to our black and white filter. I'm going to pop this, and we get some really nice desaturations coming through. But in our properties panel, we get some cool details here where we can start playing with some of the particular tones. For instance, I might want to take down some of the yellows and bringing them in so we get a little bit more dramatic. So we're pulling in, and now we've got some nice definition. These highlights are just popping like crazy coming through. Maybe we want to pull down some of those blues in the sky too, just so we get some drama and these windmills start to really pull up. Kind of go right there. So now you might be noticing that we're getting some pretty extreme banding that's coming through. And this is just because we're working with an 8-bit file. It's a JPEG that's already been processed. So when I try to do these really extreme things like changing our colors and really pulling down the tonalities of specific color ranges, it's going to introduce banding like that. So if we were to go back to the original raw files and reprocess it, we would not end up with this chunky stuff, but we could have something that's got some really nice drama coming through it. So something kind of fun to play with. So here is that before and after. So this one has some really nice tonal control on it. This one gives us a little bit more of an editorial feel to it. I'm going to throw in one more thing because I love lookup filters. I don't know if anybody's ever played with color lookup filters, but we could get to them by coming up here, hitting this little yin-yang symbol, and we're going to come down here to color lookup. So color lookup, or LUT, lookup table is what they're called. We can see here, there's already some preloaded ones. And for some reason, this just reminds me of something that would be beautifully photographed on old Kodak film. So I'm going to load up one of these LUTs, and there's some Kodak choices here. So I'm going to select one that I think would work really well for it, but we've got a couple of choices that I can flip through. And I kind of like this middle one for some nice contrast that's there. And this just adds in a subtle warmth that's coming through. So if we were going color, just giving it that slight film feeling, could be kind of cool. Or we can look at it in black and white. How are you feeling on here? What are we thinking? Do we like the dramatic black and white with a little bit of reprocessing, ignore the banding from now? Or are you more in the color camp? How are we feeling on this one? Any thoughts?
Well, I like them both, and I really did, the area where the sand is at, I did reduce that quite a bit, and I did bring in, or I did lighten up quite a bit of the engine too, so I really appreciate that. I like them both.
That's kind of the hard part of being an artist. Feel like, well, it looks cool when I process it this way, but it also looks cool when I process it this way. Which one's right? That one comes down to personal preference with it. I could see a couple of ways. I don't know which one I like better. I'm a little bit of a sucker for the dramatic black and whites, so I tend to bias towards that one, but I do like the message and the storytelling that's here. And Liz did bring up a really nice point that she had already worked this. We just took it the next step. So when we're shooting out in broad daylight, we're going to end up with high contrast lighting. When that noon type sun is hitting lighter areas, they're going to get really, really bright. And when we hit dark areas, they're going to feel really, really dark. That tonal range that we have is just too big. Our dynamic range isn't wide enough to get all the details there. So we're cheating it quite a bit to recover some of those details. And that's the really nice thing about some of this advanced masking that we can do now, is that we can get in and we can just light up very specific areas that we want to be looking at. So kind of fun. All right, getting more. JR likes using LUTs. Sarah slightly prefers the black and white because of the cyan bias in the original. That's fair. We could take out that cyan. I kind of like the romance that comes with it. But let's continue on. We're looking at more. All right. So we've got this image from John Crowley that school's out. And this is just a cool image. I love the dramatic sky, the filter that we used on it. Perhaps it is popping. It's doing some cool things. I want to show you a couple of techniques and one technical thing that we can clean up. As a fine art study, this is really strong. I'd be very pleased with this, and I wouldn't want to work it too much because I don't think it needs a lot of stuff to it. But one thing I do want to look at is where my vertical lines are. And if I'm looking here, we've got a vertical line here. We've got a vertical line here, a vertical line here, and a vertical line here, and come in here. So we've got several vertical lines, and these are almost perfectly straight. They're just a little teeny tiny bit off. And so one of the things that we want to do is just straighten these up so that we've got really nice, strong vertical lines. And this is something that we'd see a lot in architectural type photography. And one of the easiest ways to do this, or get rid of that distortion, is coming up here into, you guessed it, Camera Raw filter. There are also other ways of doing this, but I just love Camera Raw filter. And this little button over here, right below our main edit one, is going to pull up the geometry. And we can go through, and there's a button right here that just says, you know what, make all of my vertical lines vertical. And so we could do it and say, make all my horizontal lines, like if you were doing something, making those ones completely horizontal. But we want vertical, and it's just going to apply a small change here. You can, of course, do manual guided stuff too, but I find that the auto is actually pretty accurate. And if we look at this, it's a small change, but just straightened up those lines just a little bit where it wasn't perfectly true. So nice being able to kind of check those out. So that's the first thing that I'd look at. Second one, and this is mostly so I can show you a technique, but down here, the shadowed area, it's a little bit distracting, pulling attention away from this cool dramatic moment up here. So something we can do is just create a new blank layer, and come over here to our clone tool, and I'm going to change our blending mode from normal, which is kind of our default thing. So on normal mode, if I were to say sample this and paint it up there, look at that, I've got a direct copy of it. But when we change this blending mode from normal to lighten, it's only going to copy lighter things. And we've got some dark areas down here and some good clean areas over here. So what I can do is sample something from over here, and we're only going to copy the light areas. So when I paint it in, yes, I'm going on the mat. We'll clean that up in just a little bit. But I can paint in those specific dark areas and just lighten those up. And it's going to preserve all the highlights that are over there. So before, when we did the copying up here, it copied the lights and the darks, which meant that the light areas were getting covered up. So we have some neat stuff that's coming up here. I kind of messed that up. I'm just going to erase that. We'll go over. We'll try that again. Here. There we go. Just copying a little bit of these light things. Got them up here. So now I expanded this way too much. I've got it into our mat. So we could just come up really quickly, make a selection around this, and we're just going to mask it out so it's not hitting that. So now we lightened up those areas, but it feels a bit fake because we don't have it shining through. It wouldn't be as textured there. So all we need to do is just lower the opacity on this. Just take it down, and somewhere around like 60-70%, just lightens it up just a little bit so we're not ending up with deep, dark, shadowed areas, but still feels realistic. We still have those highlights coming through. They just feel like they're in a shadow without being that really deep, dark feeling to it. So kind of a cool way of doing this, but I think this is a really strong image. It's very visually interesting to look at, and that cloud control and that sky, it is beautiful. All right, looking at more. Coming up, we've got this image from Heidi, Holly Lane Tree Farm. And so we've got our subject in a very natural environment. We've got this kind of a cool, snowy area that's there, and this cowgirl that's up here. So our subject pops. We know instantly what we need to be looking at. Right here is our main area. That's our focus, right? So we know what we want to be looking at. What's distracting? I'm seeing stuff over here. This is kind of pulling my attention away. The red boots, pretty distracting. This area down here is really bright, also distracting. I love this kind of central area that's here. That feels like the main image for me. So let's look at cropping on this, because I think cropping is going to completely change it. I just brought up the crop, and I've got the freeform crop up here. If you're not seeing that, you can always hit the clear button, and it won't stick with a specific ratio. So like if we had something that's up here, we can just hit clear, and it goes back, completely resets all those. So next time that you're entering, we've got it. So let's go back to that crop tool, though, so we can look at how we can start working this. So I'm going to say, you know what? This stuff over here, that's distracting, pulling my attention away. I'm going to crop that out. Next thing I'm looking at is this really busy area. We've got bright snow, which we could tone down, but I don't think it adds a whole bunch to the story. I think we've got some cool, unique things that are going on with our primary subject, and we don't necessarily need like the torn jeans or the red boots. So let's go ahead and crop out the boots. Looking pretty good. My eye's getting caught up down here where the knee is, so I'm going to crop that up just a little bit more. It's like, okay, now that's out of the subject. I'm looking this post now, and that's not perfectly straight up. If I were to bring this in and look at this line on here, I can see that it's tilting quite a bit, so I'm just going to adjust my crop so that post feels like it's straight up and down. Look at that right there. We've got it. If you ever need straighten, there's also a straighten button too, where you can take it and literally drag on it, and it'll adjust your crop for you as well. But we've got that straightened, and now I just want to be slightly above that knee so that we're not being brought in, and I'm going to make sure that I'm a little bit above that post too. So we've got some nice room down here. Feels like we've got a lot of headroom. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that down too, so it feels a little bit more intimate. So now it's just our left and our right crops that we need to focus on. She's already at that 1/3 mark, which is kind of nice for having it off-centered. Maybe we've got room for text or something that's going on over here. could be kind of cool. But I think it's a lot of space, so I'm just going to kind of pull that back so it feels a little bit more normalish. So maybe adjust that ever so gently. Somewhere around here feels like a pretty good crop for this. We're into that emotion, into the storytelling. We still have the scene, but all those distracting elements are now gone. So other stuff that I'm seeing that's a little bit distracting on here, we've got a big broad spot on her hand. That hand is almost as big as what her face is. A little bit distracting on there. Ideally, if we could pose it, maybe just turning it so the thumb was towards us, kind of like what this is doing, would just provide a little bit of texture and break up that big spot. Because it's so light and bright and pretty low contrast, and this is our area of highest contrast, I'm not too worried about it for this particular image. I'd be totally fine with this as a commercial piece. If it was competition, I'd definitely address that. Other thing that we're looking at is that it's got a very warm feeling to it. I'm going to go ahead and create a stamped layer of this and open it up in Camera Raw. You guessed it, my favorite. We got Camera Raw here, and let's just work on the background. I'm going to select the background. I love these quick masks. Just one button click. Look at that. Background's entirely selected. And now we can do a little bit of tweaking on here. And we can say, you know what? Maybe let's pull off those highlights just a little bit. We were starting to blow some of the details. We just pull those back just a little bit. Same with the whites. We're just kind of flattening that out. Maybe lightening up some of these shadowed areas too. I can take it just that shadow. Just gives us that nice feeling. And darken it just a hair. Not doing much that's on here. And because she's wearing blue, and she's pretty warm, I'm going to play into those blue tones by just changing our color temperature just a little bit towards those blues, just kind of cooling it off and making it feel colder outside. So pretty subtle that we're looking here. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And look at that. Our background now is a little bit lower contrast and a little bit cooler, but we still have that nice warmth that's coming through on our subject, kind of before and after on here. Kind of interesting. What are we feeling on this one? Do you like the tighter crop, or was it more storytelling when we were looking at the original? Let's create a quick before and after on here so we can go back to the original. Or the cropped in. Which one's doing it for you? Any thoughts? Hey, JR, I'll take it. Okay, he likes the cropped. I'm on there too. Kind of funny how just that little bit of a change completely changes the feeling of it. We just got right in on where that story was and said, all right, this is what we want to focus on. Yeti says, I want a little bit more space on the left for it. If we were doing an advertising image, I'd totally be on board with that. Saying, you know what, we need a spot. She's already looking at it. It is prime for having that message. Saying, hey, buy these cowboy hats. Come to this retreat. Do something like that. So kind of fun looking at it. I like it. Thanks for sharing, Heidi. All right, so I've got an image from Sarah, and this is a really, really cool moment. I appreciate that we've got a really strong center of interest, and then we got some cool storytelling stuff on here. Why are these guys walking? Why did we abandon the car? And it's like, all right, we got something that's going on here, but it's fun to look at. So this one, I suspect, may have been photographed just based on the image quality with maybe a phone, or it has been enhanced or some of the details recovered, like maybe a denoise or something that's coming there, which means that our image quality is going to get us a little bit. And so if this were, say, like for image competition, or it was going to be blown up pretty big, we might have some lost details when we're looking at it here. So if we have a higher resolution version, that's always nice to go with. But this is what was submitted, and this says, say it was a small file, so maybe this was just compressed down for us to look at today. But I want to brag a little bit on something kind of cool that's happening here. So normally we don't like horizons really, really small like this. So we might say, you know what, I'm going to have my horizon and I've got maybe 1/3 on the bottom and 2/3 up top for telling my story. And we can go in, make a really long panoramic like that. That would be the traditional crop, the one that most people would probably default to for finding this moment, maybe even taking out something of the story and saying, you know what, let's just have it focused on these guys over here. Something like that. It's a cool story. We've got some neat stuff that's going on. But something that Sarah did that I really appreciate is that if we're looking at our crops and instead of coming down here and having that 1/3, 2/3, like we would for, say, landscapes, seascapes, stuff like that, look what Sarah did. She said, okay, let's take our bottom piece and where our subject is and pay attention to this 1/3 mark. Okay, when I stretch it up so that the subject and the background, and the foreground, excuse me, they now take up 1/3, and we have 2/3 of the image that's the sky. And you know what? For an image like this space matters. We've got a really nice expansive context that's up here. We're allowed to hit all 3 spaces without feeling too crowded or locked in. So I really, really appreciate the crop that's going on. Something that I do find distracting on it is this area right up here. These clouds kind of pull me out. I really, really enjoy the clouds and the context that we have down here. 100% in love with those. But this one up here, pulling my attention away. Let me show you a really quick way that we can kind of pull some of that attention back into our primary image. So I'm just going to create a new stamped layer. I'm going to go ahead and sample this blue from the sky. And let's get a nice big round brush. I'm going to take my hardness down to 0 and my size up pretty big. Right here, I'm going to go a little bit bigger, and I can just paint out this cloud. It's like, okay, cloud's gone. Feels a little bit empty though, right? So we need to add back in some of the other stuff that was there. So I'm going to create a new layer on top of it, and I'm going to sample one of the cloud colors. That nice cloud color's all sampled up, but I don't want to just paint it over there. That's going to feel really fake. Instead, what I can do is change my flow on my brush. So it is at 100%. If I take it down really low, like maybe like 10%, now when I paint through, it's just barely there, which means that I can go through and just kind of scrub over some areas that I want to kind of break up that bright blue. And look at that. That blue's gone now, before and after with it, but it doesn't feel like it's as big as open. It matches with what the rest of the scene's kind of doing. Kind of fun. All right, I'm going to show you one more little trick on this. I'm going to create a stamped layer and open up my favorite camera raw. And I'm going to look down specifically at the bottom down here where the desert sand is. That's a bit bright. It's very high contrast, very high saturation, and it doesn't pop our subjects or complement it as much. So let's go ahead and create a mask just for that. And you know what? They already thought of us. I've got a landscape button. I'm going to go ahead and hit landscape. It's going to evaluate this image and say, you know what? There's a sky in here. We don't need the sky. We want to focus on the natural ground. So I'm just going to hit that natural ground button, hit create, and it's going to go ahead and select that for me. So now there's a couple of things that I want to do to this to make it so that this image works. I want to take away some of that contrast. So I can pull down that contrast slider so the blacks aren't as black, the whites aren't as white. Maybe lighten up some of those blacks just a little bit. Pull back some of those whites. I'm just lowering contrast here. And that's kind of the name of the game here, is saying, you know what? I just want a little bit less focus. That was our before. This is our after, where we're just coming, and we're just kind of muting that down just a little bit. It still has some texture on here, so I want to get rid of that too. And I'm going to scroll down, and we've got the effects section. So I can take the texture, and I can just drag that to the left. Let me see if I can zoom up here so we can see what's happening with this texture slider. If it's all the way over, we get a lot of micro contrast. All the way the other way, it's completely gone. So we just want to take it and just gently lighten that up. I hit OK on this one, and let's just pay attention to that bottom. Look at that. Now we still have the scene established. It just doesn't pull as much attention away, and we're allowed to have the blue be our primary color, the blue and red. We don't have to worry about the orange and yellows as much. As a little bit of final cleanup, I might go through and remove some of these really dark rocks that aren't necessarily adding to the story, maybe pulling a little bit of attention away, not going crazy, just getting them so they're kind of cleaned up. So here was a before and after, just a little bit of cloud and a little bit of color change that's on it. Kind of fun looking at it. I'm really digging this crop and composition though. Nice job, Sarah. We got more. Okay, so we've got, I'm going to try to hit up these next two, and looking at Yeti. And Yeti said he's entered this into competition, couple of state competitions, and it's landing in that dreaded 79 mark. The part that all of us hate, that Club 79, we just want to get to that merit level. It's like, what's going on with it? And I've got a couple of things for us to check out, Yeti. I am going to change this to a blue brush, though, so we can see what's happening, because we got so much green. So things that I'm seeing right off the bat is it feels like, because we have this line here. Oh my God. Oh, I'm not on my brush. There we go. Because we have this line here. Oh, my flow's down. Okay, there we go. Got this line here. Now we're seeing it. Okay. Coming up, this line almost feels like it's a vertical line that extends right here. So that feels like we kind of divide that image. You can't unsee it once you see it. There's just a line that comes across right there. That's a really, really straightforward fix. We can literally just take something like the spot healing brush or a clone tool and just get rid of it. I'm just going to do a really quick job so we can see. Now we don't have that line that comes there. Our subject stands out. We're doing and looking good right here. Next thing I'm seeing is that we've got a lot of brightness in the image, which means that instead of focusing on this key moment right, I'm not sure why I'm not hitting that brush tool. Instead of hitting on that key moment right here, which is where our storytelling is, we are seeing bright spots. We're seeing a big bright area right here, and then we've got some other darker areas that pull attention away. So we've got a lot of stuff competing for we want our central subject. Let's address those, and we're going to do that with Camera Raw Filter. So coming up here, let's start by working on our background. I find our background to be really helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and select background element. It selected everything. It's selecting the matte too. I'm okay with that one. Let's start out by lowering the contrast on this background. So we want to get rid of some of those deep, deep dark areas. There we go. The computer's catching up to me. So we're just lowering some of that. Let's lift up some of those shadows. Maybe lighten up some of those dark areas. Pull back some of those highlights. So we're just lowering contrast here, just like we've done several times before already. Maybe darken that just a hair so we get some of that storytelling coming through. So we've got some pretty good tonality here. I'm kind of pleased with that. I do find that the green is very, very saturated, almost too saturated. So let's go ahead and adjust that just a little bit. We're going to come down and we can take a little bit of our tint and we could change it. Or we could change our saturation that's coming through. I'm going to just take down the saturation just ever so gently here, just so it's not as bright. Looking at this already, our subjects are popping so much more. We still have this beautiful scene that's here, but we're not focusing exclusively on that background. So now we can adjust our primary subjects. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say, you know what? Let's select our subjects. And it's going to do a really nice job just selecting those horses. And let's pull them down. I'm going to start with our exposure so we get some deeper tones that kind of match the rest of our scene. Going to get rid of those big highlights that are there. Notice how much darker we are up here. This feels really, really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK with this. Looking at kind of a before and after, it feels a lot more harmonious, but we're still not being brought into this section, so we need to do a little bit more cleanup. So I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what? Let's focus on the horse kiss. I'm not exactly sure what they're going and doing right there. So I'm going to use my object selection tool, and I'm just going to draw around the mane of the horses, the faces, get some of that hair coming up, and say, select that stuff. I did a pretty good job selecting it, and I'm going to create a negative mask by hitting Alt or Option and creating the mask one. So it's going to create a mask of only that area that I just selected. And I can see that I missed some areas, so I can go ahead and paint those in with black is going to be painting it. So it's like, okay, let's get that area coming in, maybe blend out some of that just a little bit more. Something that's coming up here, going pretty quick, but just want to kind of pull some attention away or into where our subject is. Say, okay, a little bit more focus that's on there. Cutout looks very cut out, so let's diffuse it or feather it in this case. I'm back to my properties, and we're just going to feather this coming across. Now we have that soft light that's there, so it's hitting it, but that's maybe a little bit too strong. I want just a kiss of light that's there, so I'm going to take down the density of this mask, meaning that mask is not so bright right there, so we're bringing back some of that original. If it's completely gone, it's there, so I'm just going to slowly start introducing it, so we get just a kiss of light that just pulls our attention into it. And here's our before and after. This one's very, very bright, very, very vivid, very high contrast. This one, so much softer. We've got more muted tones, and we've got some really nice harmony that's coming here. Now, if we wanted to do one step further, because why not add more stuff in here? I'm going to come up to our hue saturation, select some of these greens, and I can make sure we're selecting it. I'm going to take my green so that we're going all the way down to saturation to see that I don't have them selected. So I'm going to add in more green so that, there we go, we're hitting just the greens area. That was just a quick reference so I can see what it's doing. So I'm going to change the hue of my greens, just add a little bit more yellow into them. So we were kind of in these green world. We're just going to come to these yellow oranges ever so gently and maybe take down that saturation just a hair. Again, not very strong. Here's kind of before and after on that. Just adds a little bit more color harmony into it with our nice warm tones that are coming up here. What do we think on this one? Before, after. I think the technique, the painting's really, really nice. Just a little bit of that tonal control, that contrast that's coming through, just making it a little bit more subtle, a little bit more subdued. Do we like the color contrast, or do you like the muted tones on there? Which one feels better to you? If I were judging, I'd probably score this one higher. What are you guys thinking? Cheryl likes both. Rachel likes the muted tones. Yeah, he's just speechless. Okay. All right, we're going to hit up one more before we run out of time today. And this one, we've got an image from Mike. We've got a painting that's here. His wife, Christina, done a digital painting. And the technique is really, really nice for what the painting is. We've got some nice subtle tones. It's blended beautifully. We're not seeing weird streaks or things that feel out of place. It's got kind of that mixture between that painted photorealism that's on it. So now the processing or the technique is what's holding me back here. And so I've got a lot of stuff that's pulling attention away. We got a really, really bright face, really bright skirt that's up here, and really dark areas coming through. So we've got so much that we're battling here. It just does not feel consistent. Kind of feels like we had maybe like a bleach bypass filter that's coming through with it that's just pulling out some of those tones. And giving us that really, really high contrast area. So we can try to take some of that down and balance things out. I can create a stamp layer here, and we can come up camera raw filter and say, you know what, let's work on some of this, and say, okay, let's maybe go our background. And I'm going to go pretty quickly on this one and say, let's get it so that we don't have stuff that's pure dark. Looking up here, if you see, there's going to be some numbers when I hover over it. Those blacks, we get up to 5s and 7s. That's almost no detail that's on there. So let's lift those ones up. I'm coming up here and I'm cranking it. I'm going exaggerated to really, really pronounce this effect. Because it's already got an effect applied to it, it's going to be kind of hard to see it. But I'm just kind of lightening those ones up and just making sure that we get a little bit of detail that's on there. We now have a little bit more context in this scene. Let's start working on our subject. I'm going to select our subject. We've got this coming here. A little bit that's missed, but that's okay for the sake of this. And I'm just going to take down some of those, lift up some of those highlights coming through. Just get a little bit of that nice feeling. It's there. Maybe darken it and lower that contrast quite a bit. There we go. So we've got stuff that's a little bit more harmonious in tones. The colors, they're all over the place because we went pretty extreme with this, going with what the natural feeling of it was, but we're getting pretty close. I still find her skirt to be a little bit distracting, so I'm going to do one more. We're going to select people this time. And under the options, we've got close. So I can hit that close button and say, yes, let's darken that down, close down, and maybe those whites, bringing those ones down, and maybe a little bit of those highlights that are kind of pulling attention there. That's really extreme, so I'm just going to back that off till we find that nice kind of middle ground that's right there. So we've got something that now has some pretty cool tones that are happening here. It feels like stuff belongs together a lot more. See if it actually loads. We did a lot of processing on here, kind of before and after. So now the colors, I think, are really going to be throwing us off on this because we did transform it from what his original vision was of this really high contrast scene into something that's a little bit softer. So I want to throw a quick trick at you and just convert it to black and white. Whew, look what happens. Look at all these beautiful tones that we have here when we're in black and white. And we can kind of fine tune this by maybe taking some of these yellows and bringing them up. Maybe the red's a little bit darker so that it stands out, kind of pops. We can just kind of play around with some of these sliders and see what makes us happy. It's coming through with it. But I'm kind of digging what's happening here. I might add in a little bit more contrast to that face. And if I remember, we got a pretty high contrast face below this. So I can just create a mask on this layer and very gently just paint in like where her face is, where I want attention and focus to go. We can kind of pull it down. It's like, okay, this is a bit heavy-handed, so I'm just going to reduce the density of that mask so it's just barely giving that contrast. And look at that. We now have something with some beautiful tones. That painting technique just flies beautifully. It's not as deep and contrasty as we had before. So, Mike, I don't know if this is what your vision was with it, but this would be my preference, either keeping it in color and just adjusting the tones from our original, or converting it to black and white and really embracing our tonality that we have here. I'm digging the subject, I'm digging the subtle posing, the context, and all those pretty flowers. Those are all working in my book, but something that's kind of fun to look at. What do we think on here? Are you more into the high contrast color? Do we like the midtones, or do we like the black and white? This is our last question of the night on here. How are we feeling on this one? Color, black and white, high contrast, low contrast? Black and white, black and white, black and white. Hey, Mike, maybe you're listening on this one. Black and white, I think, is something that would be really cool, and I bet Christina would love it too. It's got that nice fine art flair, and it plays beautifully with your painting technique that's up here. So, that's been a lot today. Thank you so much, everybody. It's hard to believe it's already been an hour. I appreciate you hanging out with me. We're learning, we're sharing. Just a reminder, if you do have questions that you want us to discuss and kind of talk about here, email them to me. If you have images that you want us to review live and look at and talk about what's working and what we can improve upon, email them to me. You can hit reply on the email thread or go to my website, cwooley.com, and you can submit images that way too. Well, that's officially a wrap for tonight. Thanks everybody for joining me, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.